The deep black of space stretched endlessly, dotted with distant stars and the faint glimmer of faraway worlds. Among them, the small, unremarkable planet of Viridian hung quietly in its system, its surface scarred by deep canyons and sprawling forests. Yet beneath its calm appearance, something had gone terribly wrong. In the orbit of this fragile world, a human fleet hovered silently. The ships were massive, angular, and built for survival in the harshest environments. These were the Deathworlders, humans who had conquered planets no other species could endure. Their fleets were feared across the stars, not for their weapons alone, but for their ability to turn even the most impossible situation into victory. On the bridge of the flagship Resolute, Captain Alara Voss stood with her arms crossed, eyes scanning the holographic display before her. The SOS signal had reached them weeks ago, and she had spent every second since debating whether to respond. Humans were cautious by nature, especially when signals came from distant species. Many signals were traps designed to lure unsuspecting fleets into ambushes. Yet something about this one felt different. The signal was desperate, almost pleading. It came in fragments distorted by distance, but the words were clear. "We are dying, please help, beware the shadows. I want to know everything we can about this world, and whoever sent this call. We're entering orbit." Cloaked vessels, hidden from normal scans, began to materialize around the planet. They were unlike anything humans had ever encountered, sleek, black ships with angular shapes and glowing red sensors that pulsed like hearts in the dark. "Cloaked warships," Merck said quietly. "They're waiting for us." She activated the fleet's shields and ordered the ships into defensive positions. "Whatever's waiting for us, we adapt. That's what we do." Smoke and debris rose from damaged buildings, and the humans could see aliens moving frantically below, trying to repair energy nodes and rescue civilians. The aliens themselves were tall, elegant beings with elongated limbs and translucent skin that shimmered under the sun. They moved with grace, but exhaustion and fear marked their faces. When the shuttles landed, Voss and her team stepped out, their boots crunching against the rough stone ground. A figure approached, a Veridionian leader, her silver-blue eyes wide with relief and suspicion. You are humans," she said, her voice trembling. "Why have you come? We did not expect anyone to answer the call. But you need to tell us exactly what's happening. Our enemies are relentless. They strike from the shadows, appearing and disappearing without warning. Our weapons cannot stop them. If you are to help us, you must understand they fear nothing but the unexpected. They thrived where other species died, yet the enemy Shiara described was unlike anything even humans had encountered. We'll do what we can," Voss said, "but we need a plan. Your defenses alone won't hold them off." Voss placed a reassuring hand on the alien's shoulder. "We adapt. That's what humans do. Show us the battlefield." Voss studied the layout carefully, noting weak points in the energy shields and areas where the planet's natural terrain could be used to their advantage. "Merck, I want a team ready to deploy to these nodes," Voss said, pointing to critical points on the map. "Reinforce the shields, repair damaged energy emitters, and prepare traps. They may be faster than us, but we know how to fight in impossible conditions." The aliens watched in awe as humans adapted in real time, turning the dangerous environment into an advantage. They are different," Shiara whispered to herself. "No one else would have survived this long. Expect the first strike within the hour. Remember, they may be unpredictable, but they are not invincible. Use the terrain, adapt, survive." Engineers reconfigured alien devices to create temporary shields and automated defenses. Every move seemed desperate, but it worked. Yet Voss knew this was only the beginning. The real enemy was out there, waiting, watching, calculating. Humans could hold the line for now, but the battle for Viridian had only just begun. As night fell on the alien world, the sky lit up with flashes of distant energy weapons. The shadows Shiara had warned about moved closer, testing defenses and probing for weaknesses. Humans, however, did not falter. Voss stood on a rooftop overlooking the city, watching the enemy's movements. "They called for help," she said quietly, "and we answered. They will learn soon enough that humans do not give up. We survive, we endure, we fight back. All units prepare for full engagement. Tonight we hold this planet, tomorrow we push them back. Humanity survives no matter the odds." Somewhere in the black expanse of space, the enemy fleet waited, unaware of the force they had challenged. They had no idea that the Deathworlders were coming for them, and that survival itself was humanity's greatest weapon. As the first shots of the battle rang out across the city and into the skies, Captain Voss allowed herself a small, grim smile. Humans had faced impossible worlds before, and they would do it again. But this time, the stakes were higher than ever, and the story of Viridian and of the Deathworlders was just beginning. The SOS signal had been answered, and in the heart of a doomed world, humanity's legend began to grow. The night over Viridian was alive with fire and energy. Plasma beams streaked across the sky, and the deep hum of cloaked ships moving through orbit sent vibrations into the ground. Humans and Viridionians had fortified the city, but the enemy was relentless. Every time they thought they had a moment of calm, another shadow appeared, striking with precision and disappearing before counterattacks could land. Captain Alara Voss stood on the rooftop of a partially damaged tower overlooking the battlefield. Her eyes were steady, but her mind raced. The situation was unlike anything humans had faced before, not because the enemy was stronger, but because it was elusive. Cloaked ships, rapid strikes, and sudden attacks kept even the most experienced human soldiers on edge. Lieutenant Merc Solis joined her, his uniform streaked with dust and scorch marks. "They're learning," he said, scanning the skies. "Every strike we make, they adapt faster than before. It's like they're studying our tactics." "We adapt." She gestured to the city below, where human engineers worked alongside Viridionian technicians to repair energy nodes and reroute power through makeshift conduits. "Set up additional traps along the perimeters. I want ambush zones at every choke point. Use the terrain, every canyon, every cliff. If they can move through shadows, we'll control the shadows. Humans don't know the meaning of surrender, neither should you." Cloaked enemy ships dropped from orbit in sudden bursts, firing concentrated energy beams into the city. Human squads deployed plasma nets to intercept incoming projectiles, while engineers triggered collapsible barricades and magnetic fields that deflected shots toward the attackers. The Viridionians had never seen such rapid improvisation. "Look at them," Shiara muttered to a soldier beside her. "They fight like the planet itself is on their side." High-powered pulse generators sent waves of energy across the cliffs, disrupting the ship's stabilizers. It spun wildly, crashing into the ground and releasing a burst of sparks. Human soldiers rushed in, capturing the wreckage before it could self-destruct, while Viridionians stared in amazement. "They think faster than we do," Shiara said quietly. "They plan in seconds, and they never hesitate." The enemy strikes, though seemingly random, were converging toward a central district, a research area holding data critical to Viridian's survival. If the enemy captured it, the planet would be defenseless. "They're after the core," she said, pointing at the map projected in front of her. "We can't let them take it. Prepare a rapid response team. I want that district secured at all costs." Humans turned Viridian's hazardous terrain into deadly tools. Acidic swamps were redirected into traps, narrow ridges forced ships to funnel into ambushes, and storms were guided with energy fields to disrupt enemy sensors. Hours passed in a blur of combat. The humans' endurance was legendary, but even they were not invincible. Several squads suffered casualties, and one of the smaller shuttles was destroyed when a cloaked fighter decloaked underneath it. Voss watched the scene with grim determination, refusing to allow despair to settle in. "We hold here," she said firmly to Solis, "no matter the cost." The research stations had been defended and critical data preserved. Human medics moved among the Viridionians, tending to the wounded, while engineers repaired damaged energy nodes. Voss allowed herself a moment to breathe, but she knew the battle was far from over. Suddenly, alarms blared across the city. Sensors in orbit had detected massive movement beyond the system. Additional enemy fleets were approaching through jump points, larger and faster than any forces they had faced so far. "They're bringing reinforcements," Merc said grimly, "and they'll strike harder. Everyone listen up. The enemy thinks they can outnumber us. They're wrong. We control this world and we control the fight. Adapt, improvise, survive. We survive, and we ensure life survives with us." Humans demonstrated techniques that the aliens had never seen: improvised magnetic fields, energy pulse nets, and rapid tactical redeployments that confused the enemy's sensors. By dusk, the city was ready. The enemy fleet began its approach, and humans in orbit coordinated with those on the surface to anticipate movements. Cloaked ships moved faster than anyone could track, but human intuition and experience allowed them to predict the enemy's strategy. Voss observed the city from a high vantage point, her eyes scanning the horizon. "They will strike," she said quietly, "but they will not break us." Cloaked vessels dropped into the city, decloaking only when they were within firing range. Humans and Veridionians executed their traps flawlessly, forcing the enemy into kill zones where every move was anticipated. Magnetic nets disabled engines, pulse grenades disrupted sensors, and energy fields redirected fire back toward the attackers. Even the Veridionians were impressed. They had advanced technology, yet it was humans who adapted fastest, turning the planet's hazards and their own injuries into tactical advantages. In the midst of battle, Voss led a team to intercept an enemy vessel attempting to breach the core district. Using grappling lines and magnetic tethers, they disabled the ship, forcing it to crash outside the city limits. Human soldiers quickly secured the area, salvaging data and weapons from the wreckage. Shiara watched, awe shining in her eyes. They fight as though nothing can stop them, and perhaps nothing can. Humans and Veridionians had learned from each other, combining strategy, technology, and bravery in ways neither had expected. Voss allowed herself a brief moment to look at the survivors. Exhausted soldiers moved among the wounded, engineers repaired critical systems, and the Veridionians, inspired by humans, began organizing for the next attack. "They expected easy prey," Voss said softly to Solis. "They will not find it, not on my watch." The fight was far from over, and the enemy had yet to show their true power. Voss turned to Shiara. "This is only the beginning. They brought you to the brink, but we've shown them what it means to face humans. They will learn, and we will ensure they pay every step of the way. We have no choice but to trust in your people's strength." The Deathworlders had proven themselves once, but they knew the real test was yet to come. And when it did, humanity would meet it, not with fear, but with relentless determination, adaptability, and the courage to face impossible odds. The SOS had been answered, and the first battle had been won. But the war for Viridian was only beginning, and the enemy would soon realize that calling for death had brought them the Deathworlders instead. The sky above Viridian burned with streaks of light and fire. The first wave of the enemy fleet had been repelled, but Captain Alara Voss knew this was only a small taste of what was coming. Sensors in orbit reported multiple jump points opening at the edge of the system. From them, larger ships were emerging, ships that dwarfed anything humans or Veridionians had seen before. "They're bringing reinforcements," Lieutenant Merck Solis said grimly as he studied the incoming fleet. "And they're bigger than the first wave." Humans had survived deadly storms, toxic jungles, and planets with crushing gravity, but this was different. These ships moved with speed, intelligence, and coordination. The Deathworlders had faced impossible odds before, but the enemy seemed to have learned from every previous attack. "Then we adapt faster," Voss said. "We've done the impossible before, and we'll do it again. Signal all ground units and orbital defenses. Prepare ambush zones along every known approach vector. I want traps set in every canyon, every ridge, every valley. Make this world a death trap for them. Even with your help, can we hold them?" Soldiers positioned plasma nets, mines, and improvised explosives across ridges and narrow valleys where enemy ships would be forced to pass. Even the planet's natural storms and magnetic anomalies were leveraged as weapons, guided by human technology and intuition. By late morning, the enemy fleet had begun its approach. Cloaked vessels emerged from jump points, forming a wall across Viridian's orbit. Each ship moved with terrifying precision, scanning for weak points in the city's defenses. Voss coordinated from the rooftop command center, her voice calm but commanding. "All units, remember your training. Adapt, improvise, survive. This is our world, and we control the fight." One fighter tried to retreat but was forced into a canyon trap, where it collided with a pile of magnetic debris and exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Below, Veridionian civilians watched in awe. They had advanced technology, but it was human creativity and adaptability that had saved their cities. Even Shiara could not hide her astonishment. "They fight like the planet itself is protecting them," she whispered. Voss ignored the compliment. Her attention was fully on the battlefield. Enemy scouts attempted to flank the city, but humans anticipated their moves. They set up decoy energy signatures, forcing enemy ships into narrow zones where pulse grenades, plasma nets, and environmental traps awaited. The enemy fleet adapted quickly, but humans adapted faster. Hours passed in a blur of battle. The enemy launched wave after wave, their attacks more coordinated and deadly than before. But the humans had learned from the first wave. They redeployed troops, repaired energy nodes on the fly, and improvised new traps faster than the enemy could predict. In one daring maneuver, Voss led a squad to intercept an enemy cruiser attempting to breach the central energy core. Using magnetic grappling lines and improvised EMP pulses, they disabled the cruiser's engines and forced it into a controlled crash outside the city. Soldiers quickly secured the wreckage, salvaging critical data and weapons. Meanwhile, orbital skirmishes raged. Human warships engaged larger enemy vessels in hit-and-run tactics, using the planet's magnetic storms to mask their movements. Cloaked ships tried to ambush from every direction, but humans anticipated every angle. They deployed decoy satellites, redirected energy bursts, and used guerrilla tactics that the enemy could not counter. Shiara observed the battle from a safe vantage point. "They are incredible," she said. "They plan, they adapt, they survive faster than anything I have ever seen." The Deathworlders had earned their reputation for surviving impossible worlds, and here they proved it once again. As the day wore on, the enemy began to retreat, seemingly frustrated by the humans' relentless counterattacks. But Voss knew better than to celebrate. Sensors reported additional jump points opening beyond the edge of the system, larger reinforcements still arriving. The enemy was far from finished. "We've won the first round," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But they're learning. Expect a full-scale assault soon. Prepare every trap, every defensive line. We are not just defending a city, we are defending hope itself." Human medics treated the wounded, engineers repaired critical systems, and Veridionians began to understand the humans' methods. They had never seen such rapid adaptation, such courage in the face of overwhelming odds. The humans' resolve inspired them, giving them hope they had thought lost. Voss allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. Humans had faced impossible odds countless times before. They had survived planets where the air would burn lungs, gravity could crush bones, and predators could tear a person apart in seconds. They had survived because they adapted, because they never gave up, and because they fought smarter, not just harder. And now, they were teaching an entire species to survive in the shadow of annihilation. The calm was short-lived. Sensors suddenly detected movement in the upper atmosphere, larger enemy ships emerging from the shadows, faster and more coordinated than anything before. Voss's eyes narrowed. The final wave was coming. "Everyone listen carefully," she said into the comms. "This is it. The enemy thinks they can overwhelm us with numbers. They are wrong. Every trap, every pulse, every strategy we have prepared, use it. Adapt to what they do. Think faster than they do. Survive and we win. Humans survive the impossible, and we fight until the end. That's what the Deathworlders do." They had anticipated every possible maneuver, every attack vector, every weakness. Pulse grids disrupted sensors, magnetic nets immobilized engines, and traps funneled ships into narrow kill zones. Ground squads moved with precision, coordinating attacks with orbital strikes. The enemy fleet was strong, but humans were stronger in strategy, faster in adaptation, and relentless in courage. Hours passed in a blur of fire, explosions, and shouted commands. The Veridionians could hardly keep up with the humans' improvisations, but they followed as best they could, inspired by the example of their allies. By dawn, the enemy fleet was forced to retreat, battered and demoralized. Many ships had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Humans and Veridionians had survived a wave that should have been impossible to withstand. Voss stood on the rooftop, watching the stars where enemy ships had vanished. "They've learned what it means to face humans," she said quietly, "and they will never forget it. They are legends." But for now they had proven something critical, that no fleet, no matter how large or powerful, could underestimate the Deathworlders. The SOS had been answered, the first waves repelled, and a planet once on the brink of annihilation had found hope. Humanity's legend continued to grow, not through brute force alone, but through intelligence, courage, and unyielding resolve. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the enemy fleet regrouped, realizing too late that they had awakened a force no one could control. The humans of Veridian were not just survivors. They were hunters, strategists, and warriors who would fight until the impossible became reality. Voss looked out over the city one last time before turning to her team. "We've held them off today." Tomorrow we push back. Humanity never surrenders. We survive, we fight, and we win. The city's skyline was scarred with craters, collapsed towers, and twisted metal. Smoke rose from damaged areas, but the energy fields and shields the humans had reinforced still held strong. Captain Alara Voss walked through the streets with a measured stride, observing the recovery efforts. Soldiers and engineers worked tirelessly, while Veridionians moved among them trying to assist but clearly overwhelmed. Lieutenant Merck Solis walked beside her, his brow furrowed. They're going to come back bigger and faster. That last wave was just a taste. Every canyon, every ridge, every storm, they will learn that this world itself is against them. We'll prepare a trap so clever they won't know what hit them. Mines, plasma nets, and improvised explosives would force the attackers to fight on the planet's terms. Engineers worked alongside soldiers to prepare the traps. The Veridionians were instructed to set up decoys and false energy signatures to lure the enemy into vulnerable positions. Humans, accustomed to surviving worlds that should have killed them, quickly taught the aliens how to improvise with their existing technology, turning weaknesses into deadly advantages. Voss moved to the central command hub with Merck and Shiara, reviewing the enemy's movements from orbital sensors. They're gathering at the jump points, Voss said. They'll attempt a full assault soon. But we know their strengths and we know their weaknesses. They rely on speed, surprise, and intimidation. We'll strip all three away. And today they fight not just for themselves, but for life that cannot defend itself without us. That makes the difference. Orbital units coordinated to strike at critical points when enemy ships approached. Even the planet's volatile weather was redirected as a weapon, guided by human technology to create storms and lightning fields that would disrupt enemy sensors and engines. By nightfall, the planet was ready. Every ridge, canyon, and storm had been turned into a weapon. The enemy fleet would arrive soon, unaware that they were heading straight into a carefully orchestrated trap. Voss gathered her team on the highest ridge overlooking the first ambush zone. Tonight, we teach them something no other species has learned, she said. They will find that the Deathworlders do not just survive, they control the battlefield, even when the odds are against us. Remember, we adapt faster than they do. We think faster, move faster, and survive longer. Trigger the pulse grids. Soldiers moved swiftly across the terrain, taking advantage of every environmental feature. Narrow ridges funneled enemy ships into concentrated zones, where orbital strikes and ground fire could maximize damage. The Veridionians followed the humans' lead, their fear replaced by awe and determination. "This is incredible," Shiara whispered. "Even with our technology, we could never have done this without them." Pulse nets immobilized engines, mines detonated in their path, and storms redirected energy beams back at attackers. Even the largest cruisers were slowed and damaged before they could reach the central districts. Voss personally led a team to intercept a squadron attempting to flank the main city. Using magnetic grapples and improvised EMP devices, they disabled engines and forced the squadron to crash into a canyon where the rest of the ambush awaited. Soldiers secured the wreckage, retrieving critical data and weapons, while Shiara and her advisors watched in amazement. "They fight like the planet itself is protecting them," Shiara said quietly. The battle continued through the night. Waves of enemy fighters and cruisers attempted to breach the city's defenses, only to be funneled into traps, disrupted by energy fields and cut down by coordinated strikes. Humans moved between ground units and orbital command, improvising new strategies as the enemy adjusted. Every move was anticipated, every weakness exploited. By dawn, the enemy fleet had been decimated. Cloaked vessels were destroyed, cruisers forced to retreat, and the remaining fighters scattered in disarray. The humans had not only defended Veridian, they had turned the planet itself into a weapon against the attackers. Voss surveyed the battlefield from the ridge. The city was battered but intact. Smoke and fire rose from damaged areas, but the majority of civilians and energy nodes were secure. Human medics treated the wounded, engineers repaired critical systems, and the Veridionians began organizing for future defense under the guidance of the humans. Shiara approached Voss, her eyes filled with respect. "Your people, they are more than warriors. They are legends. We're just humans, but humans survive where others perish. That's all there is to it." The Veridionians had learned something critical. Survival was not just about technology. It was about thinking, adapting, and refusing to surrender. With humans leading the way, they had a chance to survive what had seemed impossible. Voss turned to Merk. They will regroup, they will strike again, but they will never underestimate humans again. Today, we showed them what it means to fight the Deathworlders. Every canyon, ridge, and storm had been mapped, every trap tested, and every soldier ready for what was to come. Voss allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. Humanity had survived impossible worlds before, but here they were not just surviving. They were teaching an entire species how to face annihilation with courage, strategy, and hope. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the enemy fleet regrouped, unaware that every move they made would be anticipated, every attack countered, and every strategy turned against them. They had called for death, but they had awakened the Deathworlders instead. Voss looked out over the city one last time. We've prepared the trap. We've turned the impossible into our advantage. And when they come again, they will learn exactly what it means to face humans. Adapt, survive, fight. That is what we do. That is who we are. Viridian had hope, and the humans had once again proven why they were feared, respected, and never underestimated. The enemy fleet would return, larger and more determined, but the humans had shown them one simple truth. When humans fight, even the shadows themselves can be turned against the attackers. The SOS had been answered. The trap had been laid. And the legend of the Deathworlders would continue to grow, not just across Viridian, but across the stars. The sun rose over Viridian, casting long shadows across the battered city. Smoke and fires from previous battles painted the horizon, and the air was thick with tension. Humans and Viridionians worked side by side, reinforcing defenses and repairing energy nodes, preparing for the final assault. Captain Alara Voss walked among the teams, her eyes sharp, her mind already calculating every angle of the impending battle. Lieutenant Merk Solis fell into step beside her. "They're coming, Captain," he said. "The jump points are active again, and their fleet is larger than ever. They trust you, they believe in your methods." Orbital warships coordinated to strike enemy vessels as they approached. Every trap, every obstacle, every advantage the planet could provide had been turned into a weapon. The final battle would not be fought on the enemy's terms, it would be fought on human terms. By late afternoon, the enemy fleet began its approach. Cloaked ships emerged from the jump points, massive cruisers followed by swarms of fighters. Energy beams streaked across space, lighting up Viridian's orbit. The final assault had begun. Voss stood on the command ridge overlooking the first ambush zone. "Remember, this is no ordinary fight. They rely on speed, surprise, and intimidation. We strip all three away. Adapt, survive, strike. Every move counts." Human soldiers and orbital units coordinated flawlessly, striking from every angle. Voss led a rapid response team to intercept a squadron attempting to breach the central district. Using grappling lines and EMP pulses, they disabled engines and forced the ships into a canyon filled with hidden mines. The explosions lit the night sky, and survivors quickly moved in to secure wreckage and salvage weapons. Shiara watched, her awe growing with every move. "They fight like the planet itself protects them," she whispered, but the enemy had not come unprepared. Larger cruisers decloaked near the city, firing concentrated energy beams. Orbital defenses fired in response, but the cruisers' shields were strong. Voss quickly devised a plan. "Merk, redirect power to the pulse grids and magnetic traps along the ridge. We'll force their cruisers into a kill zone." Pulse grids disrupted their engines, magnetic fields immobilized smaller craft, and plasma nets tore through their formations. Explosions rocked the sky, and orbital units fired precisely timed volleys, finishing off weakened ships. The battle raged through the night. Enemy fighters tried to flank, but humans anticipated every move. Decoy energy signatures lured them into narrow passes where storms and magnetic traps waited. Every canyon, ridge, and storm became a weapon. Every move the enemy made was met with human ingenuity and precision. By dawn, the enemy fleet was in full retreat, battered and demoralized. Many ships had been destroyed or forced to abandon their attacks. The remaining vessels fled through jump points, realizing that Viridian was a trap they could not overcome. Humans had not only defended the planet, they had turned the battlefield into a weapon, showing the enemy the limits of their power. Voss stood on the ridge, overlooking the city. Human soldiers and Viridionians celebrated cautiously, knowing that the enemy could return, but also knowing that today they had survived against impossible odds. Shiara approached, her eyes filled with respect and gratitude. Your people, they are more than warriors, they are legends. That's all there is to it. Tomorrow we will help them rebuild, and the enemy will think twice before challenging humans again. Remember, this is what the Deathworlders do. We survive, we fight, and we win. The planet that had once called for help was now a symbol of human ingenuity and resilience. The enemy fleet, far beyond the jump points, would remember this day. They had underestimated humans, and their miscalculation had cost them dearly. No strategy, no numbers, no technology could match human adaptability, courage, and the willingness to survive against all odds. Voss stood on the flagship's bridge looking out at the stars. "We answered the call," she said quietly. "They thought they could destroy a world. They didn't know that humans were here. We survive where others perish, and we fight until the impossible becomes reality. But next time they'll find an even smarter, stronger, and more prepared force. Humans don't just survive, they adapt, and we turn every disadvantage into an advantage. We survived for you and for life that had no chance without us. That's what humans do." In orbit, the human fleet prepared to leave. Viridian was no longer a helpless world. It had allies who could defend themselves, inspired by the humans who had turned impossible odds into victory. Voss addressed the fleet crew one last time. "We came here because someone called for help, and we answered. Remember this, humans survive where others fail, we fight when others flee, and we inspire hope where others see despair. That is who we are. That is why we are called the Deathworlders." The legend of the Deathworlders had spread across the stars, and Viridian would never forget. Voss looked back at the planet one last time. "We came because they needed us. We survived because that's what humans do, and we leave knowing that hope is stronger than fear and courage stronger than death." And humanity had proven once again that no challenge was too great when humans stood together, adaptable, clever, and unstoppable. The Deathworlders jumped to the next mission, leaving Viridian behind, a world that had learned the true meaning of survival, thanks to the humans who had arrived when all hope seemed lost. Across the stars, whispers of their deeds would spread. Tales of impossible odds overcome, of courage and intelligence beyond imagination, and of a species that survived where no one else could. Humans were not just survivors. They were a force to be reckoned with, a beacon of hope, and a warning to any who thought they could conquer the impossible. Captain Voss allowed herself a rare smile. "They called for help, and we came. That is humanity. That is the Deathworlders."